Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Thursday, May 16th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news and answer a question in the mailbag. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
Okay, so we have a bunch of horror news to talk about today. Let's start out with that. The first of which was kind of surprising. It was very surprising. And that is that they are rebooting Saw. That part is not that surprising. It's the fact that it's coming from comedian Chris Rock. Chris, what is going on here?
Yeah, so Chris Rock is apparently a really big fan of the Saw franchise, which I don't think any of us knew. And he came up with a story he's producing, and he's going to star in a Saw. They're calling it a reimagining, which is just another way of saying reboot, really. So get ready for a whole new Saw movie. Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed Saw 2, 3, and 4, is coming back to direct it. And we don't really know what the plot's going to be, but we do know, based on the comments from the producers and Chris Rock, that even though Chris Rock is involved, it's not going to be a comedy. They're selling it as, a dark and gritty and chilling and twisted new movie. So, I mean, I'm sure it'll have some sort of humor in it, kind of like how Danny McBride wrote the new Halloween movie, and that had jokes in it, but it was also very much a horror movie. I'm guessing it's going to be kind of like that, where it'll have a sense of humor, but it's trying to be a straight up horror film. So I don't know what to make of this, but there you have it.
I know Jacob on the past editions of this podcast has talked about his love for the Saw franchise. Where do you fall on Saw?
I am not a big fan. I think the first movie is good in its own way. After a while, it kind of got very repetitive. I do appreciate how hard those movies try to keep their mythology going. They bend over backwards to keep the mythology alive, and they're constantly like redoing stuff to make it be like, all right, this is how this happened, and this is how this person got here. So I sort of appreciate that, because a lot of horror franchises, they sort of just give up on the mythology and just try and make a sequel. So on that front, I appreciate it, but I am not really a fan of them, and I kind of got sick of them after a while, and I was happy that they were done, but I guess I should have known they'd come back sooner or later.
I mean, the concept is so prime for now, especially with all the escape rooms. I know there is that escape room movie, but these movies to me felt almost like the first movie franchise that was felt like it was inspired by TV in the serialized nature of television. I almost feel like these movies play better if you watch them in a row and not a year apart or whatever, because there's so much that you need to remember, who and what and the different situations. HT, have you ever watched the Saw movies?
I haven't. Yeah, not any of the Saw films. They were before I decided to get into horror, and I just never really got around to picking them up.
Well, I think both Chris and I would recommend the first film. That was actually a good movie. It was an independent film. It played at Sundance in 2004, which is where I saw it. And then, who was it, Lionsgate, Chris? I think?
Yes, Lionsgate owns it, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of took the reins, and, I guess that kind of... Was it Saw or the Hostel that kind of coined torture porn?
I mean, they were both around the same time. So I think it was just the era, really, that just spawned all these movies. I think actually Saw came first, but Hostel came soon after, and there were other movies too, and none of them are very good, but they all fit into that torture porn realm.
Yeah, and this is going to have director Darren Lynn Bousman reprising?
Yes, he's back again.
How do you feel about him? Because I know he's done mostly horror stuff.
He's all right. I don't think he does this thing. I don't know if he still does it, but he was very prone to doing this thing where the camera is constantly shaking, and it makes this weird sound effect. I don't know. I guess he thought it was jarring and would therefore be scary, and I always hated that. So I hope he's grown out of that. I don't know.
He also plays with some very oversaturated colors. I remember that. Interesting. It's interesting that he's coming back, and Chris Rock isn't using a whole new, filmmaker or a whole new vision for this. Like, it seems weird that you're involving a guy that was responsible for most of the original franchise.
Yeah, maybe he just thinks he's the right man for the job. I really don't know. Yeah. But I'm sure I'm not entirely against this just because I'm really curious to see what a Chris Rock Saw movie would be. But I know I'd be even more excited if he was bringing in a more interesting filmmaker.
I think the big question is, will Chris Rock star in this movie? Because that would be quite a turn for him.
No, he is. He is supposed to be starring in. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
That's the story. So we'll see.
Okay, let's talk about Bruce Campbell, who recently revealed that there's some more Evil Dead on the way. I'm not sure, movies, TV, what, but it's not going to be with Ash. What do we know, HD?
Yeah, so Bruce Campbell, who last reprised his iconic role as Ash Williams in Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which was canceled last year by Starz, revealed that he will probably be hanging up the chainsaw soon. But that won't stop the Evil Dead franchise from going on. He confirmed in an interview with Inquisitor that while he's still doing video games and doing voices for Ash, he's, quote, not going to grovel in the blood anymore. So we'll be seeing different versions of Evil Dead, and that there will be more Evil Dead stories to come. But no more with Ash Williams at the center.
See, I didn't watch the Evil Dead series that was on Starz. Chris, were you watching that?
I watched the first season, and I just didn't really like it that much, so I stopped.
I mean, is it a smart move for us to move past Ash?
I think that that ship has sailed. Honestly, it's the Evil Dead should be left alone. I don't think it really needs to be a franchise at this point anymore. I know people will disagree with me, but that's how I feel.
I thought you were going to say that Evil Dead should be left dead.
Yes,
Left for dead.
I could have said that, but I didn't.
All right.
I mean, Evil Dead is such a small movie, and it's like such a thing that should have never spawned a franchise. Like it's a cabin in the woods horror movie, and I feel like many of the things that have like Army of Darkness, I feel like is what people mostly cling on to when they talk about Evil Dead. I know there's like horror fans that love the original, but what is why are we clinging on to this, Chris? Like, what about this with this property?
I don't know. I'm sure part of it is nostalgia. I'm sure part of it is really Bruce Campbell. I mean, people like him in that role. They like him in general, and I get that. But I don't know. People just get attached to things. They can't let them go. I mean, so I don't think there's any like deep-seated meaning. Yeah, I think people just like the idea and they can't let it go. Yeah.
You mentioned Halloween earlier, and it turns out that John Carpenter recently said that he would love to return and make a little horror film again. Is it going to happen?
Probably not. Every few years, someone asks John Carpenter, "Are you ever going to make a movie again?" And he gives this sort of wishy-washy answer where he's like, "Yeah, maybe," but the truth is John Carpenter likes his semi-retirement. He likes to hang out at home. He likes to play video games. He likes to make music. He likes to cash checks for remakes and residuals. So he's not jumping up and down to make a new movie. That said, during a new interview, he said, I would love to make a little horror film or a big adventure film. It would have to be budgeted correctly. That was his quote. So basically, instead of everything would have to be in the right place for him to do this. So it sounds like he's putting conditions on it, and it probably won't happen. But if it does, I'll be happy. If it doesn't, I won't be too surprised. He also said he'd be open to doing TV. So you never know. Maybe he'll come back and direct like an episode of something. I really don't know, but I've made my peace with the idea of John Carpenter never coming back to make a film again.
I mean, I remember I was at the Toronto International Film Festival probably like 10 years ago, and that was probably his last film. What was that called? The
Ward.
The Ward. Oh, was that with Amber Heard?
Yes.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, that was not good. And for the longest time, I've wanted him to make another movie just because I didn't want The Ward to be his last movie because it's not good. But like I said, he's a, I've made my peace, and he's like a legend. He has so many great movies to his name, and he has a legacy that's unbeatable. So if he wants to hang it up, that's he's earned that right.
Okay, let's move on from horror to Marvel. Last night, Kevin Feige held a AMA on Reddit, presumably because he's doing it after his work hours, and there was not really much revealed in this AMA other than the fact that apparently Kevin Feige types slow, but yeah, like it felt like it was like 20 minutes before we got the first answer to any of the questions. Maybe he was running behind. That's just a bad joke. But there was one little tidbit of information that did have some substance. HT, tell us about it.
And yes, this is a very little tidbit, as Peter was saying. So in response to a question asking if there are any plans to incorporate the Ten Rings or the Mandarin into future Marvel titles, Kevin Feige responded yes. That's all we're getting, but it's a very affirmative yes, which means we're going to be getting the real Mandarin likely showing up at some point in the MCU. So the Ten Rings, if you remember, first appeared in Iron Man, and the Mandarin, as played by Ben Kingsley, appeared in Iron Man 3. But Ben Kingsley's version was a fraud in a twist that many Marvel fans are still angry about, but I found incredibly brilliant and hilarious. And it was presumed that the Mandarin was just a fictitious invention of Guy Pearce's character Aldrich Killian's invention. And so, but in a Marvel one-shot that was shown on Thor: The Dark World, we see Ben Kingsley's Trevor Slattery, who's the real name of the Mandarin. He comes face to face with the real Mandarin, who's not very happy with him using his name. So that was just a tease, and it wasn't really known if it was canon or not. But it seems like Kevin Feige is saying that the real Mandarin does exist and will show up at some point in the MCU. Presumably, this is based on fan theory, showing up in the first Asian-led superhero movie, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Because the Mandarin is in the MCU is rumored to be Shang-Chi's father, so that's a possibility.
Yeah, there's been this guy on 4chan that has been releasing intel or maybe just rumors for Marvel movies for the past couple years, and he's been dead on some of his predictions, I guess you want to call them. And one of his recent things that he, quote unquote, leaked was that the Mandarin would be Shang-Chi's father. So I guess that's where this whole thing came from. I guess that makes sense. Maybe that's a way of doing the Mandarin without it being offensive.
I don't know. I feel like it could still be offensive just because the name itself is so Orientalist.
Yeah.
I will reserve judgment.
But I mean, like, in that way, like, at least it's like it seems like it'd be a minor character.
Accurate.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, the thing is with his characters, and what I think Iron Man 3 did so great with it, is that it took what was essentially a character who was a caricature of just Orientalist stereotypes that was created in the 60s and turned it into like this subversion of what we think like terrorist stereotypes would be. So I don't really know how I feel about the real Mandarin showing up, but at this point we don't know if the real Mandarin is, comic book accurate. It could be another just like very loosely based on the character as we know.
See, I'm with you on this. I loved Iron Man 3 and I love that twist. But every time I talk to like people outside of the people that write about movies, they seem to hate that part of Iron Man 3. So
I think it's hilarious. I guess we're in the minority.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Martin Scorsese, who has been working on his new film, The Irishman, for a couple years now. It's going to be headed to Netflix and to theaters before that. Chris, what is holding this movie up?
So I don't know if it's holding it up so much, but Martin Scorsese, he sat down with Jonah Hogg to talk on the A24 podcast. And they both were just talking about their work in general. Jenna Hogg has a new A24 movie called The Souvenir coming out this week. It's very good. And during the conversation, The Irishman came up. And for those who don't know, The Irishman, it stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, Joe Pesci. And it's a big deal because, it's Martin Scorsese reuniting with Robert De Niro for the first time in decades. And it's also De Niro's first, Martin Scorsese's first crime movie in a few years. But not only that, the movie, it spans several decades, and rather than cast younger actors to play, De Niro's character and Joe Pesci's character, Martin Scorsese is using similar technology to that Marvel uses to de-age them. So you're going to have like a CGI younger Robert De Niro in the movie for certain scenes. And we haven't seen any footage of the movie yet. There was a teaser release, but it was audio only. There's no footage. And it sounds like the reason footage hasn't been released yet is because Martin Scorsese is really obsessing over getting this right. He says in the interview while he's watching it, when he shot the film, obviously he shot the actors as they are now. And he pays very close attention to the actors' facial expressions and, the look in their eyes and all that stuff while he's filming a scene. But when he digitally de-ages them, it changes their faces considerably, obviously, because it's making them younger. And it's sort of like throwing him off because he has a vision of how they look when he shot the scene in his head, and it's not lining up the same, especially when it comes to, the way their eyes look and, the wrinkles around their eyes and stuff like that. So it just sounds like this is slowly driving him crazy, trying to get this to be perfect. I have faith it'll turn out well. That this technology has been a little shaky, but the best recent example is Captain Marvel, which did a really great job de-aging Samuel L. Jackson to the point where it looked almost flawless. I barely noticed it at all. That said, in that same movie, they did the same thing for Clark Gregg, and his looked really noticeable. So I don't know if they just put all the focus on Samuel L. Jackson or what, but yeah. I'm hoping, Martin Scorsese, he's a perfectionist. He's going to do everything he can to get this right. So I'm hoping it doesn't end up being too distracting.
I'm very interested to see what this looks like, and I wonder if they'll ever release a non-CG version of The Irishman.
Maybe. That'd be weird, though, because I think, De Niro is supposed to be 20 or something at one point, and he obviously does not look like that, but maybe.
On the Blu-ray, there isn't going to even be a Blu-ray, right? Because it's Netflix.
There might be. Every once in a while, Netflix things will get Blu-rays, and I feel like this movie is such a big deal for them, because it's Scorsese, that they might give it one, but we'll see.
I just want Netflix to start doing more special features, because I would love to see, a scene of just
they should. Yeah. There's no reason they can't either. Criterion Channel, that's a streaming service, and they put all their Criterion special features up with the movies. There's no reason Netflix can't do something like that.
Yeah. And I know I've said this before on this podcast, but special features are so cheap to produce. To produce an on the set making of doc, it costs nothing in comparison to the feature. And if people are watching this and they like the movie, this is the way to keep your subscribers on the service, which is basically everything that they do is in service to that, right? So I don't know, it seems stupid to me that they have not really released special features yet.
Netflix seems to be leaning more towards just how the new digital consumer, aka teens, get interested in content, because they focus a lot on YouTube featurettes, and sometimes these featurettes are long enough to be special features, but they are more like advertisements or just ways of getting people interested in a title rather than just something that complements the original thing.
Yeah, but the problem there is that you don't get to. It's not a deep dive. Do you know what I mean? It's more of you're trying to sell something, and you're not actually going into spoilers and explaining how interesting things that. Interesting parts of the movie that you would not want to explore in an advertisement are, made. So,
yeah.
Okay. Our final story for today. Bill Murray apparently is open to appearing in Jason Reitman's Ghostbusters sequel. HG, what do we know?
Yeah, all Jason Reitman has to do is call. All right. Maybe I should stop. it's for a long time it seemed like Bill Murray didn't want to have anything to do with Ghostbusters 3, but he revealed recently in an interview ahead of the Cannes premieres for The Dead Don't Die that it wasn't an issue of him wanting to separate himself from the franchise, because he did make an appearance in the 2016 Ghostbusters in a cameo, but it's more of a matter of the relationship that he has with Sony. He said in a quote, "For years they said, we can't make another Ghostbusters because Bill Murray won't change the deal he made in 1984. Well, no, I never did. And you know what? They made the movie. You're the new guys. I'm the old guy. It was good enough for the other people, so it's going to have to be good enough for you." It sounds very finite, but what he's basically saying is that it's all goes down to like his contract with Sony and his old deal for the original Ghostbusters, but he would be willing to appear in a cameo if he was asked.
Like, do you think it's going to happen? Do you think Jason Reitman is going to pick up that phone and make the call?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure like Bill Murray is an easy guy to call. I mean, I've heard many myths about it, so maybe after this sort of story goes around, maybe Jason Reitman would be more willing to do that. Yeah.
I mean, we know that this is set in the original universe of the original two Ghostbusters films, and that, you know, there's even rumors that the main characters might be related in some way to some of the characters in those films. So it would be cool to have Bill Murray back, but is it necessary? I guess is the question. Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh man, I just enough with the Ghostbusters. We don't need any more. I have almost zero enthusiasm for this Jason Reitman movie. I'm sorry. He doesn't seem like the right person for the job. I don't like that they're clearly just trying to make it Stranger Things with Ghostbusters. Just let it go. This is another thing. People can't let go. Just let go of things. It's all right. Things can be in the past. It's fine.
But I do feel like Ghostbusters offers us a lot more of a universe to explore than, like, Evil Dead.
What else is there to do? They bust ghosts.
I think the magic of the original was based a lot on the cast and how wacky and how they bounce off each other. And that's why a lot of people really love that original film. And just trying to catch that lightning in a bottle again doesn't work quite as well. So I don't know. I've never really had a big affinity for Ghostbusters in the first place. So I'm just a big shrug when it comes to this reboot. And but I've resigned myself to the fact that we're getting more and more of these, and it's never going to end, and we're just going to be in a nostalgia hole for the rest of our lives.
Well, it'll end if people don't go see it, but if people are interested and people like it, you know, the thing that gives me faith here is Jason Reitman, because if you do watch that original Ghostbusters film, it's not an action movie. It's not like, you know, it's all character-based comedy. It's all, you know, it is made not even, the script is good, but it's the actors who make it. And I think Reitman is, you know, a character actor guy. He's, you know, he's good in that realm. And I think, I don't know, I kind of like the Stranger Things take on it. I mean, we haven't seen much of it yet. We've only seen that little teaser, so I'm going to reserve judgment. But I'm interested. I'm a kid of the '80s, and Chris, I need my nostalgia. So,
well, I understand. It's not like anyone cashes in on nostalgia ever, so I understand why you would need some of it.
What did you say? I was too busy watching Cobra Kai season 2. Okay, let's go into the mailbag. Kolin from San Jose writes in, and this is an email from a while ago, but we're finally getting to it. He writes in, what are some movies you're embarrassed you haven't seen yet? Okay, now this is hard for me because I feel like if I'm embarrassed I haven't seen a film, I'll see it. Like, I feel like there aren't many on my list of movies. Like, there are movies like, I didn't see Green Book last year, but like, I'm not embarrassed I didn't see Green Book. Do you know what I mean? I guess the most recent movie that like is a huge thing that a lot of people bring up to me is The Life of Pi. I've still not seen The Life of Pi. And
it's fine. The book is better.
Yeah, well, okay. And this one you're going to give me crap about, HD. Love Actually. I've never seen Love Actually.
Well, yeah. you should watch it. But also, I know that a lot of people hate it, and I resent that. So I don't want people to go in and know it and thinking that they're going to hate it. It's a great movie. I watched it over and over again. It's also incredibly problematic and, so treacly and sentimental, but I enjoy it. And I know a lot of people do. You should watch it, Peter, but only watch it at Christmas. It falls very much under Jacob's Christmas rules.
Yeah. You know, and actually, no, I've come to one. I was looking at a list. I was looking at my Letterboxd and looking at movies I have not seen rated by, the highest rated. This one you're gonna give me crap about, HD. Howl's Moving Castle. I have not seen that.
Oh,
I've seen a lot of the Miyazaki stuff. I have, for some reason, not seen that one.
That is a great one. It's one that really grows on you too, because when I first saw it, it didn't make that much of an impression on me because it's a little bit slower and a little bit more, I guess, mature. It's really good. It's I have all of the Miyazaki movies on DVD, so I don't know when I'll ever get the chance to force you to watch it, but at some point.
Those movies are hard to find. Like, those DVDs are out of print, and you can't rent the movies on. Like, Kitra and I were gonna go try to watch that on, and we couldn't find it on iTunes or anywhere. Like last year sometime.
Yeah, I hunted them down. They were like the one physical. I don't own a lot of physical media, but I was like, I'm gonna own all of the Miyazaki/Studio Ghibli movies, and I hunted all of them down.
So I know in the past on the podcast I've chastised you for not seeing some movies. I don't even remember what they were, but probably 80s films that were from before you were born. But what is your biggest embarrassments?
Yeah, I don't remember what they were either. I feel like they should be on this list, but I can't think of them at the moment. If you do know,
you've seen Back to the Future, right?
I have seen. Of course, I've seen Back to the Future. The other day, Chris asked me if I'd ever seen Tim Burton's Batman, and I felt very offended.
It's just that movie is much older than you. I don't know. I didn't.
You write about comic books for a living, Chris.
I know, but I thought it'd be more rude to just immediately assume that you had seen it. I always, when I was younger, I did this thing where I was like, "Oh, you haven't seen this? I assumed you had," and I don't like to do that anymore because I'm an older, more mature gentleman. I was being polite. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. But I have seen those movies. I mean, there's some gaps, of course, but for me, embarrassed is a very strong word. It has to, I guess, have to do with a movie that a lot of people have seen or a lot of people think that you should see. So I kind of go back to classics. I haven't seen Almost Famous, which I know is on.
Yeah, that was one of the ones we chastised you because that is like in my top few movies of all time. You need to see that.
I will watch it at some point. A classic I haven't seen is 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I know, I need to watch it. It was actually showing at like 70 millimeter, I think, one of those, like in a theater recently, and I was planning to go see it, but I didn't get to. So I missed that chance. And I also haven't seen A Clockwork Orange. I think I've read the book, but I was a little bit intimidated by the movie. I was when I was thinking about watching it, I was a bit young and scared of horror movies. So I'll probably go back and watch it again, or watch it rather.
This isn't about movies that you've seen. Oh wait, you have seen or haven't seen?
No,
it?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Sorry. I said again, but I said that I misused it. So yeah, that's the ones I have off the top of my head for now. Because I guess I would categorize embarrassed as like, big movies that people think that you should see and you haven't seen.
The weird part is I feel like for me, I'm not embarrassed of any of the movies I mentioned that I haven't seen, but I think people would be like, you haven't seen that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not personally like ashamed that I haven't seen those movies. Well, actually Howl's Moving Castle, I probably am. Chris, you see like 1,000 movies a year or something?
Yeah, I'm not big on the shaming people thing. I think it's wrong to be like a gatekeeper in that way and be like, again, I remember when I was younger, I did used to do this thing where I was like, oh, I can't believe you haven't seen Pulp Fiction. But everyone goes at their own pace. Everyone has their own taste.
When I'm shaming HT, I'm doing it in love. Like, it's not
no.
Like,
I know, but I also know that there are people who take that, like, there are movie bros who take this stuff so seriously, where they sound like they want to fight you if you haven't seen certain movies. That said, I do have lots of stuff I wish I have seen and I haven't. A lot of like foreign films, older films, I have like a big blind spot on, and I wish I didn't. I actually have not seen any Miyazaki films ever. Because I'm like overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. And yeah, and that's sort of the thing. Like, I know I'm going to have to watch all of them. I think
watch Spirited Away or Totoro, I think, are the...
I think you would really like Princess Mononoke, too. That's his most epic and grand one, and really great mythology and action as well. Nausicaa is having his 35th anniversary, so that's a good time to check that out. That's his first feature film with that, like, basically launched Studio Ghibli. So
I need there to be like a box set with all of them in it, and then I would just buy that and sit down and watch it one day. That's sort of what I need.
When is Miyazaki coming to the Criterion Collection is what I need to know.
I don't know. We should ask. And then I guess the only other one, again, not embarrassed about, but everyone talks about it and I've just never seen it, is Mean Girls. I've never seen Mean Girls. And I've avoided it because I don't like the title. I had a really hard time in high school. My high school experience was really bad. I was just really depressed and really lonely, and I don't want to use the word bullied, but that's like the closest word to it. And just the idea of watching a movie that's literally about that, even a comedy, I just don't want to go through it. I don't want to sit. That's sort of the reason why I never saw.
It's not 8th grade. Oh wait, you never saw 8th grade?
No, I never saw 8th grade either, and that's sort of the same reason that everyone was like, "Oh, this movie's so hard to watch because of, the content." I don't want to re-experience it. It's sort of like when people are making all these movies about like Fox News now. There's all these movies about Roger Ailes, and I'm like, I don't need to watch those movies. I know Roger Ailes was an asshole. I know Fox News sucks. I don't need to watch movies about it. And it's sort of like I'm the same way when it comes to movies about how horrible high school was. Like, I don't need to relive that because I spent my entire high school experience just wanting to get out of high school. Like, that was all I wanted in the world. It was like, when I've grown up, I've actually met people who were like, "Oh, I miss high school," and I think those people are insane.
Are those people?
I don't know, but it's usually people younger, like people in their 20s who are like, "Oh, I miss high school." I'm like, "You're nuts. It was the worst. It was the worst experience of my life. I never want to go back there."
I will say Mean Girls is enough of a satire and heightened enough of a satire that I think you will enjoy it because it just skewers all kinds of, bullies and titular mean girls, as they would say. So I think you would enjoy it. It's a good comedy and it's really smart and funny. So it's not going to be triggering in any way, I don't think. I think 8th grade, after hearing what you've just said, it will probably trigger you in a little bit, but it's not exactly about being bullied either. It's just about being insecure. 8th grade is. But yeah, I think you would enjoy Mean Girls.
Yeah, what HT said. You know what? I pulled up here the AFI Top 100. I put it in our Slack channel here. I'm wondering, what is the highest movie on the AFI Top 100 that you guys have not seen?
AFI Top 100.
Mine is number 12, The Searchers. I've never seen John Ford's The Searchers.
I haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia. But again, like
you know what you should do when it does this, like they do these like road shows of like 70mm screenings where they come to New York or LA and stuff like that. When it you should wait until they do a 70mm screening in New York. Yeah.
I should check it out. But for classics like that, or for foreign films like the ones that Chris is talking about, where I also have some of it a blind spot, I kind of see it as more of a chance for me to watch these movies rather than an embarrassing gap, because I do want to see them and I think they'll enrich me in some way, but they're not something that I'm embarrassed at having never seen because, I'm sure it'll be great to see, but I'm not sad that I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, like think of like your favorite movie. Think about how cool it'd be to watch that again for the first time. That's what this would be like. Yeah. That's how I look at it. For me, the highest is 82. I've seen every.
Oh my God.
I have not seen Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, directed by F.W. Murnau. So that's my first one. Let's see. I have also not seen.
That's a silent romantic comedy. So HT, you should watch that.
I should check that out.
Yeah.
I've actually never heard of that movie before. You
I don't.
mentioned it.
I think I've heard of it. I've just never.
How is that
We're
movie
now
in the top
movies.
100? And we've like, I don't know. That doesn't
Must be really good. We
Yeah.
must all be bad at our jobs, and we should resign in disgrace.
I mean, it is 1927, so maybe it's just aged out.
And it is
Generate-
Murnau. He has so many like classics. So I guess I'm not surprised, but I've never heard of this movie either.
Yeah. Crazy. So the highest up is 82 for you, Chris. Wow. Well, congrats.
You won.
Thanks,
won.
You're
everyone.
the ultimate movie fan.
Wait, is there any other movies under 82 that you haven't seen?
I have not seen Swing Time. I don't know what that is. I don't.
That's the Fred and
Oh, the Fred
Ginger.
Astaire. I've seen clips from that. I have not seen the
It's
whole
a great
movie.
one.
Yeah, I've
Although,
seen that. That's good.
If you do a Fred and Ginger marathon, you will realize that all the movies are incredibly light on plot, and it's basically just the same plot over and over again, but with different dance sequences. But it's so fun to see them do those dances, so you don't really care.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. If you, what is the movie that you're embarrassed that you haven't seen yet? Write us at peter@slashfilm.com. You can also send your questions for the mailbag to peter@slashfilm.com, or your life advice with Chris. Same email address. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find all the stories we talked about today linked in the show notes. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. And please head on over to our iTunes page. Give us a 5-star rating and review. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you tomorrow.